Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday, Rob.
Happy Friday.
I give everybody 30 seconds to get on. Anybody have anything great this week you want to share before we start?
I submitted 3 loans and got same day mortgage commitments on 3 loans simultaneously, which is pretty awesome.
That's fantastic. So today's topic is going to be, we all have the same amount of time, and I know it might seem like a waste of time to kind of go over this, but I do think it's really relevant. So I want to share with you all a couple of things that I came up with, and I also wanted to see if Bruce was on yet.
Yes, I'm here, Rob.
So Bruce, you want to just take a minute to, because I was second guessing myself on like some of these narratives about, poor credit, getting a better deal than good credit. And I think my instinct was correct.
Right.
And I just want to clarify that with everybody here so that you can share that with your consumers and your clients.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, I understand there was some confusion. There's even confusion in the media, and then last week about what's going on with this narrative that's out there about mortgage rates are the people with better credit are going to be subsidizing the people that have lower credit. It's actually been the opposite since 2008, but it is true that there was a change. So let me just explain what I mean. In 2008, after the crisis that we all went through, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac introduced what's called risk-based pricing, RISK, based on statistical risks of a file. It was the only way they could survive. It was necessary at the time. So there was risk-based pricing, and there was adjustments to rates based on down payments and credit scores. And there was also adjustments to rates that were attributable to whether they were adjustables or condos or multifamilies based on statistical risk. It had nothing to do with anything other than what the numbers were. Now we're going back 15 years ago. So for example, 15 years ago, a person, let me back up for a second. There's been a change to these categories that they used to base it on. It was different for somebody with 20% down, 5% down, 10% down, 3% down. The categories of the disparity between those with good credit or really, really good credit scores and those with lower credit scores was pretty significant, right? And again, it's been going on 15 years. What's happened recently, effective May 1st, and it's already been in place for a few weeks, is that they've shortened the disparity. But the negative that I think is important for us to understand as real estate professionals and mortgage professionals is that the people with good credit are still getting a better rate than the people that don't have the higher credit score. That's not the issue at all. The issue is that the range has changed. They've narrowed the gap based on certain categories where people couldn't quite get into the market because there was too big of a gap. I'll give you an example of one category. There's really only 10 to 15% down is the category where the change was. If you're putting 20% down or whatever, it's the same. If you're putting 3% down and you have a good credit score, it actually got better. But the category that's being out there in the media that we need to understand is that the borrower with the good credit score is still getting a better rate. So for example, if you were putting 10% down and you had a 740 credit score last month, right? You might be getting, this is not the rate, but you might be getting a rate of say 5% if you had a 740 credit score. But the person that had a 660 credit score would get 5 5/8. They would pay more than 0.5% higher than the person with 10% down that had the better credit score. Now what's going to happen is you're going to be looking at about 0.25% difference between the two. The buyer with the better credit score is going to get 5 1/8, and the buyer with the lower credit score is going to get 5 3/8. So they're just shortening the gap. Now, in theory, yes, the person with the better credit score isn't getting as good a deal as they used to have, but they're still getting a better score. That's just the way LLPAs and risk-based pricing work. It was necessary when they started it back in 2008 because it was, to be candid, it was the only way that the mortgage industry and the real estate industry needed to survive, to be quite frank. I mean, we couldn't let Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac go away. And reality is, years ago, when we didn't have credit scores, these kind of things weren't there. You really couldn't base loan performance on risk. You couldn't base it on what was going on. You had to base it on the same thing. One thing that's really interesting about this that's important to bring up is that, first of all, I hope everybody's clear on that. And if there's a question, I'll be glad to answer it. But one thing that's also important is that FHA doesn't have these things. FHA doesn't have disparity pricing based on risk-based. And FHA recently, as everybody knows, dropped their monthly PMI cost. So FHA loans are now becoming really popular again because there's certain scenarios where they just price up way better for a consumer just because they price up better. So it's definitely true that those with higher credit scores are not going to get as good as rate as they used to get, but it's still better than what it was. The disparity just shortened. That's the best way to explain it. And the media, of course, is going nuts with it because why not? You know, we're in the middle of trying to survive in this industry. Why don't they just throw a monkey wrench at us? It's like we got a life jacket and they threw us an anchor. It's like, Christ, the last thing we need is to be explaining this, but I guess that's what they chose to do. Good news is the PCE numbers came out today, which is for personal consumption expenditures, and it's the biggest indicator of inflation that we look for. And inflation clearly looks like it's coming down. It was way different than what the estimates would thought, and the market's rallying a little bit today. So the good news is it does seem like this inflation thing is starting to stop. And regardless of what the Fed does with short-term mortgage rates, once inflation's under control, gang, mortgage rates will come down, period. So you're going to see an improvement on that as we go. What's this? Oh, yeah. And this thing that's going to change. You mean with the LLPAs? So the narrative that's being put out there is that this change with the credit score is going to take place in May, but it's already out there because it's really already for loans delivering in May. So we've already seen this pricing built in. So anyway, that just wanted to clarify, or at least offer in addition to what you guys may have already heard. It might be helpful. Hope that's a little more, a little easier to understand in case people ask.
Now, Bruce, I just want to take everybody back to before, like, credit scoring and what the industry looked like. And my narrative on that would be somebody with a 660, profile, even though there wasn't a score, they would not have access to financing because there was like a pass-fail grade back before credit scoring. So I think the whole paradigm of credit scoring has given people the right expectation about what they can get. Because before that, you didn't know whether an underwriter would accept or reject it because there was no way to compare credit profiles, right? So now
it was based on how many times you took the underwriter to lunch in the office. That's the way we used to determine how we got the loans approved. Those were the good old days. I wish it was still like that.
It was unscientific approach,
Yes.
but now I think the expectations are there. Everything's more commoditized, so that everybody has a standard. So that if Bank A sells to Bank B a loan in this particular criteria, it's based on credit score, loan to value, right?
Not only that, but when these changes that were made, again, these LLPAs have been in place for 15 years. There's been some tweaks to it over time where they changed some stuff for refinances or high balance loans, but they've been in place for a while. But when they do these changes, they base it on these categories that need help. So for example, a buyer with really good credit that's putting 3% down, their rate is an eighth better than it was, 2 months ago. So there are categories where everybody benefits. So they tried to attack the categories where it would move the market, not hurt the individuals. In other words, the people with 10% down to have lower credit scores, now they can afford something versus they can't. And the people with better credit scores, now they get a better rate. So it's not as if it's, and I'm not trying to just put a positive spin on it. I mean, risk-based pricing is just necessary because if we didn't have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, we wouldn't, we'd be in a lot of trouble. I mean, they're a huge component to how our real estate industry works. And in addition to that, with FHA, everybody talks about FHA, and FHA doesn't have these loan level price adjustments, and they don't. But what FHA does is when things are bad, FHA changes what their monthly PMI is. So they kind of do it in a backdoor way. They say, oh, now the PMI on FHA is 1% a year. They just dropped it to 0.5%. Well, the reason they just dropped it to 0.5% is because when everybody got killed with bad loans from years ago, they charged everybody 1%, and now they're okay again. They're going back to 0.5%. So this is just what's necessary for our industry, and we just have to know how to answer the questions without making it seem, this is a behind the scenes conversation, but without making it seem that it's different than it is. The people with good credit in every category are still getting a better rate with the people that have less than good credit. It's just not the disparity in a couple of buckets, 10 and 15% down, are not as big as they were. That's all.
Could I ask, Bruce, would it be okay? Would you be able to just write up a short thing that the agents would have that would explain this?
Rob and I were joking a little while ago on the phone that there's a Yeah, well, I could explain it simply, but the category, like if you looked at the boxes, it'd be kind of,
But Bruce, I think, without going through the boxes, because each loan to value has a different change. But maybe if you could give an example and put it in writing, like, for example, when we talked about it this morning, and this is, big disclaimer, this is not the rate today, but let's just say in a normal market, the rate is 5%, right? And if somebody was putting down 15% or 10% down, right? A 720 FICO might be at 5 1/8, and a 620 FICO might be at 5 3/8 or 5 1/2, right?
it's bigger than that. A 740 FICO would have been at 5 and a 760 FICO would have been at 5 5/8. If you have a 620, the rate would probably be at 6.
Okay.
So there's a huge disparity.
Okay, so if you can give us just a couple of examples, then make it really simple and make it not the market rate, because the rates change every day.
Yeah, just
So
more
just say
attentive,
a really simple 5% rate. This is what it would look like. And Bruce, if you can get that to me, I'll put that in with the Mastermind notes that go along when we post the video on YouTube, okay, and the Abundance in Real Estate channel.
For the people that are visual, I just want to show you one thing real quick. I'm not going to bore you with this, but do you see the items in red there? That's why it's hard to illustrate. There's certain buckets where it got better, certain buckets where it got worse. So I'll try to just give 2 examples in the areas it got worse, because that's really all that matters. If
Well,
it's better, nobody cares.
Well, the area that it changed, right?
Yeah.
Not really
Well, it got
necessarily
worse,
got worse.
Well,
but
some
it got-
areas, a lot of areas changed for the better too, but we don't
Right,
need
but
to
it got
worry
better
about
for it got better for the bad credit and worse for the good credit.
that. No, not with 3% down. It got better for both.
Okay, well, let's put that out and we'll have that
Okay.
out there for you, Robert. And I guess I don't want to get caught in the weeds, but the narrative of if I have a 780 FICO that I'm paying higher than somebody with a 660
Just not
is
accurate.
is
Just not
debunked. It's not accurate.
It
The
was-
difference is
It was very confusing. In the last couple of days, I just happened to have conversations with managers of other offices and other companies, and
Yeah.
no one was, everyone was saying to me, what's the deal here? I mean, I don't understand why, people with bad credit are getting a better rate than people with good credit.
Yeah, it's not accurate. They're just not getting as good a deal. So in theory, they are getting beat up a little bit, but that's the people with the better credit are paying a little bit worse, but they're still getting better. So
Francine, today's not about financing. We're going to get to today's subject. I see the message, but I think that this is like an important foundation that I just wanted to clarify. So today's conversation or today's discussion was about every day, the top producers and the average producers and the low producers all have 1,440 minutes, and you will never have the time for your income producing activities unless you intentionally and purposefully block and vigorously defend those time slots. Okay, I just wanted to be really clear, because a lot of people that I see in this industry, what we do is we come in and we're reactionary to the way we run our day. Like we get in, all of a sudden there's a problem with the transaction. We drop everything and we work to fix that problem. And then, the day kind of controls us instead of us controlling the day. And this is another quote. This is something from Jim Rohn, who was Tony Robbins' mentor. And I think this is one of the quotes that I really, really think about and take to heart. And it's either you run the day or the day runs you. Okay, it's just a switch of the words, but it has a significant different meaning, right? So who on this call has a particular time that they block out every day for doing some IPA or income producing activity that you would care to share? Bruce? Oh, you're on mute.
I don't
sir.
want to share because then it'll, you guys will all know what
Okay,
I'm doing.
all right,
when
we
I'm
won't
doing
share.
it,
We
huh?
won't
Yeah,
share.
yeah,
But
yeah.
does anybody have anything that you want to share on the real estate side?
Sure, I do. I prospect and do Vulcan 7 3 times a week, from 11 to 12, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Besides that, on my other days, I have time blocked on my calendar for prospecting to my farm. So every day I'm doing some kind of money-making activity.
Right. And have you seen that help you with the consistency of your business?
I got a listing from Vulcan, so that was great. And it's helped me make more connections. Definitely with my prospecting, following up on my postcards and just making better connections in my farm areas. So definitely.
Fantastic.
Do
Now,
you track it, Raina? Do you track it? Like, do you track the activity to see like a metric at all?
So I do like an accountability email at the end of every session. So I'll send it to my manager, if I got any appointments or if I got any connections. So that's mostly how I'm tracking it. But I felt I got a lot more activity when I was blocking for 2 hours at a time, and doing the calls for 2-hour sessions versus the 1-hour session. But it just gets very tedious to do 2-hour sessions like 2 or 3 times a week. So I switched it up, but I might switch it back now just because I wanted to see like how I felt and like how it would work if I broke it up more. So I don't know, Rob, do you have any suggestions? What do you think is better, like doing like a 2-hour session block or smaller sessions?
oh, I mean, I think that, if you can block the time to do 2 hours and you can be up while you're doing that, then that's a healthy income producing activity. And I think when you say you do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, okay, that kind of ties into another analogy that I want to bring up. And I know we have a lot of people in the company that recognize that, health and fitness is important. And many of us have habits of going to the gym 3 days a week. And sometimes if you went to the gym and you worked out for 4 hours, as opposed to going 2 hours 3 times a week, you would not get the same impact. You would probably burn out, lose energy, and there would be a declining return.
Yeah.
So to Bruce's point, if you measure what your results are, and if in 2 hours you get better results than spending 1 hour twice a day, then I would really pay attention to that.
It's
and-
imperative, Raina. It really helps to have you focus on the activities that are getting the results, to track the activities.
Okay, definitely.
So that might be, a really key point to how you manage your day. But I would say that, if I was to go by gut, and maybe I'll ask, Robert first, because you've been around a lot of people in the business. Robert, what percentage of the people do you think, have a solid routine where 3 hours, even as little as 3 hours a week, they know exactly what they're doing at a certain period of time? What's your gut tell you?
10%.
I was going to say 25%, but I think it's definitely low.
Right.
And if you were able to do that, you're going to have that muscle memory, and by tracking it, you're going to have the evidence to support the continuance of those activities. Okay. Everybody has the same amount of time. Okay. And we all choose how we spend that time. Right. And this is probably not a really, great analogy. But there's a famous story about a bank robber, Willie Sutton, who they said, why do you continue to rob banks? And he said, well, that's where the money is. And why do you prospect? Because that's where the result is, right? Like, why do you block the time and prospect? And why do you defend the time that you block? Because it's very easy to say, oh, you know what, I got to solve this problem. I'll do the prospecting later. And when you say you're going to do it later, Robert, does that, in your experience, happen, or probably not?
Probably not.
Right.
That's why I always, when I would meet with the agents, I would say to them, look, I think you're better off doing your prospecting first thing in the morning. If you can fit that into your schedule, because that way, if something comes up that's going to disrupt the flow of your day and you don't get around to doing your prospecting, then you've really lost for the day. This way, at least, if you don't get anything else done that day, you've gotten your prospecting out of the way, and you can look back at that at the end and say, well, at least I accomplished that. And what's more important than prospecting?
Yes. And I just did a scan. I met with one of our really successful team leaders earlier this week. And, my conversation started, and and he or she shall remain nameless unless they volunteer. But, you know, they did, I want to say it was 48 listings. And I said, how many of those lists, how did you get those? And they thought that probably a half to 2/3 were from prospecting, you know, FISBOs, circle prospecting, whatnot. And we did this exercise of going through each and every one of them. And we did a little tally sheet. And exactly half of those leads were from past clients and past client referrals. And that was like an eye opener. And I think we should all go through that exercise. You know, now that maybe we have a little bit of time, probably takes you less than an hour, go onto the MLS, look at all your transactions, and then look where they came from. And, you know, my conclusion from that was perhaps instead of spending, you know, 10 hours a week prospecting expireds, FISBOs, and circle prospecting, maybe we should reinvest in our past clients, or even stop calling them past clients and talk about our clients and sphere of influence and what they can contribute. Okay, because literally, and it was 24 out of, I think, 47 or 48. It was like half, or maybe one transaction over half. And, you know, we were all chasing, you know, the people that don't know us, that are hard to convince. But, you know, we have gold in the people that know and trust us. And by experimenting and measuring, it was an eye-opening experience. Okay. So
backstories. There are countless romantic comedy
let me
movies.
just mute everybody here real quick.
Some cute, some sad.
Yeah,
I can experience the
Mario,
I have to,
unmute yourself there, Mario.
Yeah, I have to say, it's like we always keep focusing, and I'm one of the biggest spending a lot of money on getting new leads, and I really lost focus on what about all my past clients and how much business I could have got from them. So that's what I'm going to be putting into place this year, is focusing on my past clients, because that's easy business. It's free. Instead of keep trying to get new leads and work harder and harder and harder, why not work smarter and work all your past clients, which if they love working with you, why wouldn't they recommend you to somebody else?
So Mario, why do you think, you know, why do you think other agents, and perhaps even yourself, avoid calling your previous clients?
I don't know. It's just, I think it's like a momentum to just get more business. And possibly we don't think it's going to be as quick. So we just find other avenues to just get more business, spending money. And if it's like, it's crazy. I'm just so fed up with all these lead generation companies that promise you this, promise you that, and they absolutely give you nothing in return. It's just so frustrating.
So Mario, do you think that, you know, perhaps maybe part of your reservation on doing that, and many of our colleagues are avoiding calling because maybe we feel we didn't keep in touch, and then when we make that call, we feel awkward? Do you think that has
Possibly.
some
I try to keep in touch with a lot of my clients. And when I do the closing, I always tell them this is just the beginning of a friendship. It's not the end. I won't disappear. And I try to really keep in touch with all my clients, but obviously out of touch sometimes, you know, because it's hard to keep up with everybody. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to start doing some videos. And the one video I'm going to do is a video where I'm going to ask for reviews. So if they didn't give me a review on Zillow, on Google, so I'm going to have a video with me say, hey guys, thanks again for your business. I'm trying to expand and, you know, get a bigger business. So if you guys don't mind leaving a review on Google and Zillow, I think that's going to be a way to build, because it looks like Google is the way to go. So I'm going to focus on that.
So one suggestion that I want to put out there, which I think would be a really high yielding activity and not overly burdensome, would be to have a purpose or an intent to meet with your sphere and your past clients 4 times a year.
And actually, Maria, when she went to R4 last year, she got these postcards. It's $25, and they give you 4 touches a year for 5 years, and it's only $25 a client. I
One-time
mean,
fee.
that's, yeah, one-time fee, $25 with 21 touches. That's like a no-brainer.
So, I mean,
And
that's a
I'm
great-
gonna be doing that too. They also have like a folder, like it's like 4 pages. That's, I got all my lists of all my past clients. I'm gonna be sending one of those out to every one of my clients just to get in touch with them again. Because the American Life magazine is just so expensive.
American
And
Lifestyle magazine, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a great tool. I used to do it and my clients loved getting it. So I'm gonna get something different, but still be in front of them at least 4 or 5 times a year.
So I think that this program that he's talking about is from the personal marketing company.
Yes, yes, it is.
And
Actually, I just got my business cards through them, and I think they're the cheapest ones around. I mean, 1,000 cards rounded for $35. Where are you going to get that? Nowhere, because they always charge you a lot more money because it's rounded. And they have different packets.
what's
I've been
nice
doing
about
that
it too,
program for about 3 or 4 years. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, for $25, how could you go wrong? You can't go wrong for $25.
Right. And yeah, that's simple. Probably the reason why most people don't do that, Mario, is not the $25. It's setting it up. It's having the consistency to do it all.
No,
the
I know.
time.
And that's why, I got all my listings, all my past sales from Zillow, because everything's on Zillow. So I have everybody's address. So now I got to get their phone number and their email. And, I got to put a name to it. And I'm going to be mailing out the cards to every single one of them.
Rob Garber, can you put the contact info for that company if you have it in the chat box? A couple people asked.
Yeah, because Maria is the one that introduced it to us, and I'm all in this year about getting back to my past clients, because I'm just tired of wasting money bleeding it for the stupid generation companies that don't do nothing.
Right, and I think, Mario, we even need to repurpose the way we call past clients. Maybe we talk to our prior clients or our clients, because mindset, saying past, is kind of a disempowering mindset.
Yeah, like
but
I lost a listing of 700,000, and I had reached out to this client, and I told her, say, hey, your house has went up a lot of money. She's like, oh, I'm going to be contacting you back in December. Well, I looked on the market, and there she was listed, and I'm like, I thought you were going to list it with me, but it's my fault, because I should have probably followed up. If I had the first app, I probably wouldn't have lost that listing, and it's just the way it is. I can only blame myself. I can't blame anybody else.
right, well, we're not about we're not about the blame game here. We're about
No, but what I'm
forward
trying
and we learn.
to what I'm trying to say is that if I was in touch with her on a more constant basis, probably I would have been the first person that she would have came to instead of going to a new agent. You know what I mean?
So Mario, there's a Chinese proverb which says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. And the analogy is, if you don't have these systems set up and you've been in the business for 20 years, let's do it now, because you can't take time back.
No,
But you
I
can
am.
do it immediately.
That's what I'm about to do. I'm already working on it.
So on Monday's peer-to-peer, we talked a little bit with Chopper Russo about, hit a value add called Updater. And we also talked about his events. Okay. And Chopper puts on, Choptoberfest. He did a ski trip, maybe even a town day. So he had like 3 events where he had opportunities to engage with his clients and his fans. And, let's say that you had 1 or 2 events a year where you invited, your clients and your sphere. Even if half of them showed up, the other half is going to be like, wow, that was really nice that Mario invited me to this event. So you kind of get credit for people who don't even participate.
Yeah,
And
I've I've invited my clients to my home, like if I had a dinner party, not all of them, of course, but some people I have, invited and they've come to my house a few times. Because I try to establish a friendship with all my past clients.
Right. So, one of the things that I'm gonna put out there for somebody to take the initiative to do is to have an intent of having FaceTime, and I don't mean FaceTime on a Zoom meeting, but let's say the average person did 20 transactions a year and they've been in the business for 10 years. That's 200 transactions that you did. And maybe some of them are out of the area, or some of them are, aren't possible to visit. So maybe you have 120, 150. If you were intentionally,
Actually, I had 277 past sales in the last 7.5 years. So I have a big sphere that I just neglected all this time, where I should have probably focused more on that than focus on spending money on stupid lead generation that don't produce.
so Mario, do you know where all those people live now?
Yeah,
So, and are they predominantly in Monmouth and Ocean County, or all over?
yeah, mostly in Ocean County.
So what if you, and when I say you, everybody on this call went through all those clients that you've served and would give you business and referrals, and you intentionally met with them 4 times a year, or attempted to? And, there's the famous Brian Buffini pop by. Anybody do pop buys? Anybody do that? Robert, what do you do on a pop by?
Interestingly, I was in a meeting and I left the meeting and I realized I was 2 blocks away from one of my clients that I had sold a house to 13 years ago. And I hadn't been in great contact with them. So I just drove over to their house and rang the bell and got a reception like I was their long lost, best friend. And, ended up listing their house because they had decided they were going to move to California. So they were just like, I can't believe you're here. This is wonderful. Thanks for coming in. And it's great to see you again. So I think that's good. I also, I try to get as many of my prior clients connected on social media so I can see what's going on in their lives. And then, I'll stop by their house to congratulate them, when their son is graduating from high school, or I see that they've done an update to the house. I stop by and say, tell me about it. And they have tremendous pride and excitement to tell me about it. So I think those are really the benefits of drop-bys, just to let them know that you're paying attention to what's going on in their life and that you're a part of it.
And if you took that time, Robert, and even on social media, or intentionally understood what was going on in people's life, you could say, hey, how's Mia doing at Drexel? It's exciting that she's going there studying fashion, right? I mean, that gives you that personal touch that's hard to replicate. And just from you sharing that conversation, Robert, I can see the emotion and how that made you feel good, as well as it being good for your business. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, how do you feel if you were doing circle prospecting, calling people that might hang up on you?
Definitely a different experience.
Right. So you're probably more likely to continue that habit of, visiting people that are your fan. But yet, what percentage of people, Robert, do you think, see their previous clients or their clients at least once a year face to face?
Let's say 50.
So you think 50% of the people go and visit their clients?
I think so. I mean, we have some people on this call I know, do it religiously.
I'm thrilled to hear that. And I think that, the other 50%, ought to, make that a habit. And, somebody had said, I think Francine said, if you give exceptional service, you need to spend less time on marketing. And I think that's one of the strengths that we do at Remax, because, we are, we're the cutting edge professionals in the business. Yet sometimes we get the urge to chase the tough business that, we don't want to go back to that prospecting because it might hurt, right? Or we might not get the result that we want.
Hey, Rob,
Yes, sir.
I use that personal marketing, and for Mario there, for about $250 a month, he could send out 270 newsletters to
Yeah,
them, including
that's what-
postage. And
that's
they have
what I'm
5
doing.
topics, homeowners update, insights on real estate, living well, spotlight, property talk. So every time I close a transaction, I spend $50. I put my seller on that 5-year drip campaign. I put the other buyer, if it's not even an orphan client, on that 5-year drip campaign. And I put them into the once a month newsletter campaign. So maybe that's why I had 70% of my business last year from referral and past clients. It's just kind
Yeah,
of,
I'm gonna do that newsletter. That's the one thing I'm gonna start sending out, possibly on a monthly basis. That's my next step.
it's 93 cents a piece, and that includes postage.
Right. It's so cheap because you send a postcard, they're gonna throw it in the garbage. At least that has some content in it that they may like and save it.
I read it, I get it. They send you one to yourself, and I read it, I go, oh, this is not bad. I'll read it. So it works.
Yeah, and for 93 cents, that's absolutely nothing. I spend a lot more than that on lead generation that goes nowhere. So
And Eric and Mario, thank you very much for sharing that with the group. And if you don't know, Mario's down in Monmouth and Ocean County, and Eric is, I guess, Palm Beach, Martin, and you do Boca area too, Eric, or no?
We just closed one in there, Palm Beach, Martin, and St. Lucie County.
Okay. So, these are people that are definitely on the most successful end, and they're giving you advice from the heart, because they made a lot of, no offense to you guys, but I know you've made a lot of mistakes, and that you want to share what you're doing that works.
The most successful people make the most mistakes.
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna mute everybody, Eric, if you can unmute yourself. I mean, you become successful because you learn from your mistakes, right?
Right. I mean, it's taken me years to find this marketing company. For years, I just had past clients sit on the, and never call. I still don't call them, but I do have about 1,000 people in that newsletter. And one time I did get through it once, but I had to go back through it after just doing. I was the one Rob talked about thought all my business came from cold calling, FSBOs, and expires, and realizing it was only about 15%. And 85% was past clients under of influence, maybe, and then a few sign calls in there, but
it was kind of an eye opener, right, Eric?
Very much so.
So I would encourage everybody to run your list in the MLS and do that research. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, no, but what the eye opener was, I thought I only did 54 transactions, and then I realized by doing this with you that I was only counting the listing side, not the buyer side. So I actually went to 70. Once I figured that out, it was 79 transactions. So I went from feeling like a failure to a success in an hour.
By knowing your numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a great exercise, Eric. I'm going to talk about, who thinks that this is a great market? Anybody think this is a tremendous market?
I do.
Eric does.
I do for sure.
I think the majority of us feel like the volume is down, and the market is challenging. People don't want to move from 2%, 3% mortgage rates that they have to buy something else. If they do sell, they're like, where am I going to go? Because inventory is so tight. So there's a lot of reasons why people might feel that this is a challenging market. But what I think this market can be for us that are committed to it is an opportunity to ingest what we're doing and to maybe make some trim the fat, so to speak, so that when things get to be more abundant, that we are going to be in better position to take advantage of that change. Okay. I was talking with some other people in the industry, and they had to make some cuts, and they had said that I wish I had the foresight to stop some of the waste when I was in the abundant market. Now they're analyzing things and making some changes, and those changes are going to last beyond this market. Okay, some of the lessons that we're learning are going to make us better once the market shifts, and maybe we won't need to be so dependent upon third-party lead generation sources or things that cost a lot of money that reduce the yield that we get after we pay our expenses. So I think there is good in a challenging market, and the only way that we learn is, or the best way we learn is by experiencing it. Sometimes you can't hear advice and internalize it so that you make changes until you see it yourself. And sometimes that might be losing a listing because you didn't keep in touch. And does that make you angry, or does that make you want to say never again? I mean, I'm going to lose business, but maybe never again will it be because I failed or I neglected to keep in touch with the people that are most likely to give me business, that are most likely to refer me. Because there's a whole litany of reasons why a client could get derailed, and one of those is somebody who is proactive and smart like Eric is going to start sending something to the buyer of his listing, right? And he's going to own that client. I know that when I went up to Connecticut with some of our team leaders and talked to a $300 million team leader, she would leave a gift for the buyer of her listing, right? And then say, I'm now going to own that client if the other agent orphans or abandons the client. And some people had said, well, Rob, is that ethical? Is that legitimate? Eric, what are your thoughts? Like, did anybody ever complain about you mailing to somebody else's client?
No. And here's the whole thing. You don't have to worry about it because they're more than likely their realtor's not doing anything with them either, like everybody else in this business. It's very common not to follow up with your past clients.
Amen.
Rob, I think that Glenn Baker had wanted to say something.
Glenn? Glenn Baker, you there?
Yeah, I am. No, you just asked the question. I answered it, but we're good.
Okay.
All right. So Glenn is on a little getaway, and you're still on this meeting. So that's commitment there, Mr. Baker. And I'm envious. It looks like a nice place.
It is.
So Rob Durso, do you do that same principle? Do you when you sell a listing, do you keep in touch with the buyers?
Every time. I'm a firm believer in that. And I learned it the hard way.
I can only imagine what that is. I don't want to ask you. But Rob, do you think that some people might say that, is that ethical?
I believe it's ethical.
I support you on that. I do believe it's ethical.
I don't see how embracing someone who did business with you, regardless of how you frame it, they're doing business with you just like the other agent is doing business with you. I send a card to the other agent thanking them for working with me. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
And if the agent is smart, he'll jump on the bandwagon, or she'll jump on the bandwagon and say, this is why I'm successful, because I do business with successful people, and what makes them successful is blah, blah, blah. But if 98% of them don't even call their client again, they get nothing.
So if you can just internalize that principal alone, should be able to help you, grow your business by 15 to 25% by
Can I
adopting.
just say,
Go ahead, Rob.
I just want to throw something in real quick that happened to me this week, talking about agents, other agents that would they get offended or would they whatever. So I have a local agent that does not work with me, never worked with me, that called me this week and said, listen, Rob, I was on a listing appointment. It's a divorce. And the husband wants me to do it, but the wife doesn't want me because I'm friends with the husband. So I gave them your name as a really good agent that they could call, that they would both be happy with. Now, I don't know about the rest of you guys on this call, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but to me, I don't know how much better it gets than to have your competition referring you on a listing. So, if you do it the right way, you are not going to be in the doghouse for leaving something for a buyer that you didn't sell. And keep in mind all the time that you don't know where your next transaction's coming from. You got to treat the other agent as good as you're treating your seller and the buyer, because it'll come back to you. That's it.
No, I appreciate you, sharing that story. I want to talk about another thing that's kind of weighing in my head here, which is the whole, I guess, the whole paradigm of how we engage with clients. And I want to take it from the lens of maybe a first-time home buyer who's, challenged with this market right now, and the experience they get, at least from the onset, from one brokerage to another, would probably seem to be very similar. Okay. And where I think that we need to consider, looking at it from a different perspective, is studying what an accountant would do. Okay, a professional accountant. And what an accountant does is advises clients the best way to structure their finances to avoid unnecessary taxes. Okay. And that's very different from an accountant that conspires for tax evasion, which is illegal. And what I mean by this is, if we talk to somebody looking to buy a house, how many of us ask them if their plans in real estate include ever buying an investment property in the future? The onset, I see one hand, but I'm going to go to the trusted source, Robert Garber. Do you talk to your clients about if they ever want to? They're a couple buying their first house. Do you ever ask them at that time if they ever want to buy an investment property in the future?
I sure wish you hadn't asked me that question. I have to admit that I don't.
But would you think that would be an appropriate dialogue to have?
Yes, I do.
And do you think a lot of people in the United States and probably the globe have gotten a lot of their wealth from real estate?
Yes, I do.
And would you, with the story about the best time to plant a tree, Robert, is you can't turn the clock back, but maybe we can have those discussions with our clients and talk to them about what their total real estate needs are, and maybe even educate them on how real estate works.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, last night I was having drinks with an agent from another company who I'm very good friends with, and he was telling me about how when he first got started in real estate, which was over 20 years ago, his mentor talked to him about buying investment properties. So he started with the mentor doing it, and now granted, money is very different because he's from Colombia, but down in Colombia, where he originally grew up, he now owns apartment complexes, and he uses them as Airbnbs. And he, has, he's branching out, that he's got like an empire that he doesn't, whenever he's ready to stop doing business, he's set. He's absolutely set for life.
Yep. And Robert, sometimes what might happen if we don't guide our clients correctly, they might buy their first house, put down 10 or 20%, and then go want to buy an investment property. And if the lender says, oh, if you're going to live there, it would be this, but if you're buying it as investment, it's that. And sometimes people even get tempted to do loan fraud, which is bad. And it's not necessary if you plan around it. It's the same analogy as, tax avoidance versus tax evasion. Tax evasion is lying about what happened, and tax avoidance is intentionally preparing on how to comply with the laws and use whatever you're entitled to your advantage, right? So if you could put money away in a 401k and not have to pay tax on that, that's tax avoidance, not tax evasion. Okay, that's a good financial plan. And I just think our industry, and I'm putting this out for everybody to redefine what we do from just, hey, I'm going to help you find your house, then maybe orphan you until you need something else, to let's talk about your real estate plan. What's your future like? Did you ever want to invest in real estate? And I'm going to just put it out there, not a lender, but any agents want to guess on how many people do you think buying a house would say it would be a good idea to buy an investment property if they could? Anybody want to volunteer?
About 75%.
How many?
75%.
75%. Anybody else want to, give me a gut instinct?
I could talk from my own experience that when I got into real estate, actually before I got into real estate, I was flipping houses. And then when I became an agent, I just found the possibility to buy rental properties, and it was the best thing I ever did.
So I want a third volunteer to tell me just like what percentage of people do you think when they're buying a house might say in the next 3 to 5 years, it would be great if I could buy an investment property? We have a silent group here. Mario, what percentage do you think of your home buyers for their own use would like to buy an investment property, in your opinion?
I've been approached a couple of times. I would say maybe 20%.
20%. We have 70%.
I'd say about 10.
10%. Now, Ron, let me ask you this. I was fishing for that. I see Yasmina says 80%. You say 10. And Ron, is that 10% because that's what they believe, or is that 10% because that's what they would desire to do?
I think people are just afraid of the interest rates right now. They will invest in this with the interest rates. We've been cold calling all morning and calling some of our leads. And one of them says, well, she's not ready to sell yet. She wants to sell it, but and buy something, but she's afraid if she buys something at these interest rates.
No, they're waiting for.
They're waiting for the interest rates to come down. That's what he said.
You keep waiting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what we kind of said to him. They're never going to come back down to that.
Just like everybody was waiting for the prices to drop after the pandemic, the crash. It still hasn't dropped in 3 years. So
yeah, they're going to stay pretty much. I mean, I would think they're going to probably stay somewhere in the 6s throughout the course of the year. What do you guys think?
I think we deal with the hand we have, Ron. And
I used on one of my clients, I used Rob's analogy, or was it Bruce's, where you date the rate, marry the house.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first closed on my first townhouse, I was at 7.75.
Rob, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think most people don't believe that that's even a possibility, that they could own a piece of real estate for investment. The average buyer buying something today
you
doesn't
raise your hand?
even. I'm sorry?
Yeah, they can't see it, right? They can barely see owning their first house themselves, right?
Exactly,
And
exactly.
I think that's Rob, that's where we can separate ourselves, right? And
Exactly.
not only if you can have somebody buy an investment property, does that put money in our pocket? But that adds value to the relationship that we have with our clients, because very few people are doing so. And I think, one of the things that we might want to do is we want to maybe up our game on having the conversation about investment property, so that we are the expert that they need, at least for the entry level, which means, understanding which properties are good investments, which aren't. And maybe 10 years down the road, some of the clients will come to your house or come to one of your events and tell all your other attendees how you changed their life by making them, or allowing them to expand beyond what they thought was possible. And in the past, probably in my lifetime, there's only been very, very narrow pockets of time where real estate has not been a good investment. And you never lose if you don't sell, right? So if the market takes a temporary dip or a temporary pause, as long as your property is cash flow positive, you don't need to sell it. This is a tremendous opportunity. It's not something that's, some scripted sales pitch. It's about, letting people realize what might be possible. And it starts with when they buy their first home, how you structure that first transaction. And very few people are having those conversations. They're just like, hey, let me run around and show you properties, instead of talk about what's your real estate, what's your total real estate needs, what do they look like, and how might I enhance it? How might I be different from every other person that you talk to, right?
I think it's all about adding value from the very start. So what I do when I start a conversation with the new client is I have my lender and I talk to them together, and we talk about the opportunities that are out there for them. And I think most people are just so transactional. They're not thinking about the relationship from the beginning and what they can offer, and educating a new buyer, especially we're talking about a first-time home buyer. They're so scared. They're just thinking about what is it going to cost them monthly. They have X amount of money in their head that they know that they can spend, and that's it. But an investment, I mean, I just talked to a first-time home buyer that I worked with a decade ago who now has over 10 investment properties. I put that seed in their head from the moment I met them, the first dinner I had with them. And to see them have over 10 properties now, it's the best feeling. And the guy is 40 years old, just a year older than me. And it's just a great feeling to know that I've been a part of that journey. So it's very.
Hey, Rob, could I hop in?
Absolutely.
So just as far as the first time buyers, I just did a first time buyer seminar with Karen Dinkins from the Pine Brook office this week. We had about 20 first time buyers at the Newark Public Library. And showing them how they could purchase their first home. And a lot of them were very interested and didn't know, about doing a multifamily home to start. It's a great way to start when you're a first-time buyer before you own properties, to be able to build that investment portfolio. So, we have 100% financing on 1 or 2 family FHA loans that, hopefully we'll be able to convert some of those people into, buying multifamily homes. But it's just to, echo what you're saying. It's before you own property, that's the best time to start building it, because you can take advantage of lower down payments doing it as a primary. It makes sense.
Yep. I mean, so many things that we use in our life have started because of necessity. Okay, not because of convenience. I think, a lot of modern technology has come because of the horrible effects of wars. People are like, hey, we need to find a technology for survival, and then it becomes a convenience in life. And I think this market change is an opportunity for us to become more efficient, to us to trim some of the fat, to develop some better habits and find different ways to create clients for life. And, you know, that story, David, about somebody who has 10 properties at the age of 40 is really impactful. And that would be motivating me to have that discussion and not to be a salesperson, but you change that person's life by helping them buy those properties, right? And that feels good. And, you know, everybody should be given that same opportunity and that same amount of time and that same expertise to make the decision that's right for them and their family.
And Rob, keep in mind, it's very market appropriate right now with what's going on. Like a lot of the clients, you know, our equivalent is, for those that don't, you know, when it's really important for us to keep in touch with everybody is all along, but when rates are low or equity is high, it's a more important time for us to keep together because we either refinance or help them pull equity. But on the investment property right now, conversations with homeowners that have so much equity in their home that bought just a couple of years ago, there's a lot of people that don't realize they can leverage that. And yeah, I know rates are a little bit different, but there's ways to tap some equity without that. And I do believe it starts in the beginning. So for what that's worth from the lending side, I think we all kind of agree that it's a conversation, like David said, it's a conversation you have in the beginning. Who doesn't want to, you know, your initial question, well, who doesn't have a desire to own multi? Sure, if it works. But when folks get a little older, get a little more conservative and they're at a different stage of their life, it becomes less important. So I think it's a great time to have the conversation because people have equity. Everybody's tempted by money, you know, even to sell. I mean, what a great time to call everybody. People in my neighborhood are selling their houses. They didn't even want to.
Yep. So I'm gonna wrap this up with a quote from the Oracle of Omaha, perhaps one of the best investors ever. He said to be fearful when everyone's greedy and be greedy when everyone is fearful. And I think right now the market is in a state of flux. A lot of people are fearful, and now is the time to really expand and grow and to separate ourselves from everybody else. So that's my ending here. And I hope that we've got at least one or two things that we can implement based upon this discussion. And I can't thank David, Mario, Mark, Bruce, Rob, Eric, and everybody that contributed for, you know, sharing some of those tips that are, you know, practical that you're using today with the group. So
Rob, I send you the pictures of the brochures, what they look like to your cell phone. So if you want to share them with other agents, this way they have I was trying to put them on the chat, but I guess you can't add pictures in there. So if you want to share them around.
fantastic. Thank you, everybody. I'll try to see if I can have Fred put that in the attachment to the video when we post it. Everybody have a productive weekend, and thanks everybody for sharing your stories.
Thanks, Rob.
Take care. Thank
Take
you,
care.
Rob.